It called me a burden. 3 months later, it came to my door, begging for help. It wasn't the words that broke me. It was the silence that followed. At 68, I sat quietly across the dinner table from my son Nathan and his wife Brittany. The clinking of forks and the humming fridge were the only sounds until Brittany slammed her utensil down. "You're freeloading in a house you didn't pay for. We're not your retirement plan, Margaret." Nathan didn't even look up. He just muttered, "You've done enough damage. I'm done pretending we owe you anything." I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just folded my napkin slowly and stood. "I never asked for anything," I said, calm as still water. "But I understand when I'm no longer wanted." Silence. Even the cutlery stilled. I walked away, my heart not heavy, just finally hollow. 3 months later, they came to my door, soaking wet. Before we begin, if this story touches your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, come with me back to where it all began. Before the silence. Before the pain. Maybe then you'll understand how a mother's love can vanish in the very home she built with her own hands. After my husband passed away suddenly when Nathan was just 8, I didn't have time to grieve. I had a boy with sad eyes and a world that kept moving whether I liked it or not. I became a full-time nurse. Then overtime. Then triple shifts. I slept sitting up in break rooms and lived off vending machine crackers just to make rent and buy Nathan new shoes before each school year. I remember skipping meals so he could have hot lunch at school. Pawning my engagement ring to pay for his private tutoring when math became his nightmare. I still see his smile the day he got accepted into college. "You did it, Mom," he said. "You always believed in me." When he had the idea for his startup, I emptied my savings, signed off my retirement fund. I believed in his dream more than I ever believed in rest. He made it too. Fancy house, a nice car, a beautiful wife. I was proud, even from the sidelines. But somewhere along the way, I faded. Brittany never liked me much. She made it clear I was an intrusion. "Please knock before coming into our kitchen." Or, "Don't touch Ellie like that, she's not used to old-fashioned discipline." She'd complain about my clothes, my scent, my silence. Once, I overheard her say to Nathan, "She's turning our house into a nursing home." He didn't defend me. Worse, he started pulling away. When I got sick, fever and chills, he told me to take the bus to the clinic. "I'm busy," he said without looking up. I coughed into my scarf the whole way there, praying I wouldn't faint. I sleep in the storage room now. It's not a bedroom, just a space between boxes and a rusted water heater. Brittany says they need the guest rooms for real guests. Some nights, I cry quietly, but only after they've gone to bed. I still knit, tiny sweaters and socks for Ellie. I know she'll never wear them. Brittany thinks handmade clothes are embarrassing. One evening, Nathan stood in the doorway of my makeshift room. "You've got 2 weeks," he said. "After that, I don't care where you go." I stared at him. The boy who used to cry when I left for night shifts. The one who once said, "Don't ever leave me, Mom." Now, he couldn't wait to see me gone. I didn't argue. When Nathan said I had 2 weeks to leave, I simply nodded. I packed at night, quietly, careful not to wake anyone. My belongings fit into 2 suitcases, mostly sweaters, old photographs, a box of yarn, and my nursing certificates I no longer had use for. No one asked where I'd go. I didn't tell them about the cabin. It had been my husband's family's old fishing retreat, hidden deep in the woods, abandoned for decades. But it was the only place that didn't require rent, permission, or pity. On the morning I left, I baked banana bread, Nathan's favorite. I left it on the counter with a note, "Be good to each other." Then I drove off. The road was long and winding. I hadn't driven that far in years. My fingers trembled on the wheel, and my vision blurred once or twice, but I made it. The cabin greeted me with silence. The roof sagged in one corner. The air smelled of damp wood and mouse droppings. But it was mine. I swept the floors, aired the sheets, and lit candles. There was no electricity, no hot water, just a rusted cot, a kerosene lamp, and the wind whispering through broken window panes. Still, I felt freer than I had in years. Each morning, I boiled water over a small camp stove. I washed with cold cloths. I ate canned beans and crackers. It wasn't much, but it was enough. At night, I'd wrap myself in layers and sit by the window, knitting tiny socks and sweaters for Ellie. The stars were clearer here, the silence deeper. No Brittany, no scolding, no sideways glances or forced smiles. I was alone, but not unloved, because I had loved fully. And that love, though bruised, still breathed. The days passed slowly, measured by the light shifting through the cracks in the wood. Winter crept in earlier than expected. The wind howled at night, slipping through the floorboards, chilling me to the bone. I rationed what little I had. One can of soup could stretch across 2 meals. I made tea from pine needles and leaves. I wasn't sure were safe, but they warmed my hands if nothing else. Sometimes I'd talk aloud to the air, to my late husband, to no one in particular. My voice felt foreign after so much silence. I remembered Nathan as a boy, how he used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, whispering, "Don't go anywhere, okay?" "I'm not going anywhere," I'd whisper back. But I did go. Or rather, I was pushed. One evening, I found a rabbit caught in a rusted trap near the woods. Its leg was broken. It whimpered softly, afraid and hurting. I wrapped it in a scarf and brought it inside. I fed it crumbs and let it sleep near the fire. Its small breaths gave me comfort. We were 2 creatures cast aside, learning to survive in exile. When it healed, I let it go. It didn't look back, and that was okay. Sometimes, love means letting go, even when no one thanks you, even when no one remembers. But when I didn't expect anything to change, life has a strange way of pulling you back to your feet when you've been on your knees too long. One morning, after a stormy night, I heard a knock on the cabin door. Not a knock like someone was coming to visit, but a frantic, desperate pounding. I opened the door slowly. It was Mrs. Tillman, the widow who owned the farm down the hill. I remembered her from long ago. She'd brought soup to our house after my husband's funeral. Now she stood shivering, drenched in the rain, her hand covering the bleeding wound on her arm. "I slipped in the barn. Please, help me," she gasped. My instincts kicked in before I could think. I put her to bed, cleaned her wound, stopped the bleeding, and bandaged her arm. She cried, not just with pain, but with relief. "You were always meant to be a healer," she whispered. The next week she returned with fresh eggs, soap, and canned peaches. "I told the church about you," she said. "They need someone to care for the elderly. Paid if you like." I blinked in disbelief. Someone wanted me again, not out of pity, but on purpose. The work at the church was just the beginning. One of the parish members, a retired doctor, saw how I handled the elders. "You've still got it, Maggie," he said, smiling. "How'd you like to work part-time at the local clinic? We're short on skilled hands." I nearly laughed. Me? A nurse again? But I said yes. Within a month, I was wearing scrubs again, checking vitals, comforting nervous patients, training younger staff. My muscles ached at first, but my spirit lit up. The paycheck was modest, but steady. Enough to start saving again. With each deposit, I remembered the feeling of agency, of standing tall, not out of pride, but purpose. 6 months in, I made an offer on a small cottage just outside town. 2 bedrooms, a real kitchen, a porch with morning sun. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I signed the papers with trembling fingers. No one gifted it to me. No man, no child, no husband. just me. I moved in with nothing but a second-hand sofa, a coffee pot, and a quilt I'd made during long, lonely nights. I lit a candle that first night, sat on the floor, and whispered, I made it back, not to the past, but to myself. 6 months later, Nathan was on a high. His company had just landed another round of funding. Brittany posted photos of designer bags and luxury brunches on social media. They had a new nanny, a private school enrollment for Ellie, and a freshly renovated kitchen with a marble island. But behind the scenes, cracks began to show. It started with a tax audit. Nathan brushed it off until the IRS froze his accounts. Then came the lawsuits. A former employee filed a whistleblower report. Brittany's name appeared in a client fraud investigation. The media picked it up. Headlines blazed. They lost clients. Investors pulled out. Their bank called in the mortgage. Brittany's PR agency dropped her. Friends stopped responding. One by one, the doors they once opened with ease began to close. Ellie, confused and anxious, began wetting the bed. The nanny quit. The school called, warning about unpaid tuition. Then came the final blow. Their home, once their pride, was seized, with no money, no friends left to turn to, and reputations in ruins. They were evicted. Their boxes lined the driveway. The neighbors watched, but didn't offer help. That night, they slept in their car. Ellie cried for her blanket. Brittany cried from shame. Nathan stared blankly at the ceiling. The second night in the car was worse. Nathan tried calling old college friends. None picked up. Brittany messaged her influencer circle. Every reply was cold or non-existent. The world that once cheered their brunch photos now turned its back. Ellie developed a cough. With no insurance and no cash, they spent hours waiting at a free clinic. Brittany sobbed in the parking lot afterward, clutching Ellie's tiny hand. Nathan began blaming Brittany. You never listened. You spent like we'd never run out. And you lied, she shot back. To the IRS, to our investors, to me. They yelled until Ellie started crying again, louder this time. The sound echoed inside the cramped car like punishment. By the third day, the gas tank was nearly empty. They hadn't eaten since a gas station sandwich the morning before. Nathan pulled over near a public park. Brittany sat on the curb, her hands shaking. Where do we go now? Nathan stared into nothing. Then quietly he said, There's one place. That evening, as rain began to fall, they stood in front of a small cottage, humble, with a warm yellow porch light glowing. Nathan knocked. The door creaked open, and there she was, Mom Madgie. It was the knock I never expected, but somewhere, buried beneath the years of silence and distance, I think I always knew it would come. I froze, one hand resting lightly on the old brass knob. The air inside the cottage was warm, still scented with cinnamon and cedar from the evening tea I hadn't finished. Outside, the wind shrieked as if warning me. Rain lashed against the windows in sheets, and faintly, almost like a memory, came the unmistakable sound of a child crying. I didn't move right away. Instead, I listened, to the storm, to my heartbeat, to the hush of fate drawing near. When I finally opened the door, I saw them. Nathan stood just beyond the threshold, soaked through. Water streamed from his hair. He had draped his old denim jacket over Ellie, shielding her from the downpour. His shoulders slumped forward as if the weight of his choices had finally become too heavy to carry. His face, once proud and stubborn, was drawn now, lined with exhaustion. His lips parted but said nothing at first. Behind him, Brittany looked like a wraith. Her mascara ran in thin rivers down her cheeks, and her arms wrapped tightly around herself, not for warmth, but for protection, for guilt. Her eyes flickered up to mine, and for the first time in years, she didn't look defiant. Ellie clung to her mother's legs, her little frame trembling. Her hair was wet and stringy. Pink socks soaked through. She looked up at me, uncertain, blinking as if trying to place a face she had only seen in photographs or perhaps heard about in bitter whispers. I didn't cry. I didn't sigh. My chest ached, but I kept my voice steady. Nathan cleared his throat. When he spoke, his voice cracked. "Mom," he said, barely audible over the rain. We don't have anywhere else to go." The silence that followed stretched like a chasm. My eyes lingered on his, searching for something truth, maybe, or remorse. Brittany stepped forward slightly, almost instinctively shielding Ellie. "We're not asking for much," she whispered. "Just somewhere dry for the night. Please." She had never said please to me before. Not once. Nathan's eyes brimmed with tears, but he didn't let them fall. "I know we don't deserve anything from you, after the way we treated you, after what we said." He looked down, ashamed. "You were right about everything," he added, voice thick with regret. "But we were too proud to admit it. I was too proud." The words scraped against years of silence, of being ignored, of being cast aside. Brittany turned toward me fully now. Her voice was raw, trembling. "I said awful things to you," she confessed. I wanted you gone. I thought you were a burden. But I didn't understand. Not until we lost everything. And now," she swallowed hard. "Now, I think I finally understand what it means to be a mother. And I don't know how you did it. I don't know how you stayed kind." I looked down at Ellie. She wasn't crying now, just staring at me with wide, solemn eyes. Eyes too old for someone so young. That's what life does when parents fail their children. It makes them grow up too fast. My fingers gripped the edge of the door, nails pressing into the wood. And still, I didn't scold them. Didn't ask why they never called. Didn't demand answers for years of abandonment. Instead, I stepped back and opened the door just a little wider. "There's a shed out back," I said quietly, my voice not cold but measured. "It's dry. I used to sleep there." They didn't flinch. Nathan nodded slowly, understanding what I was offering and what I wasn't. "Thank you," he whispered. "Even that is more than we deserve." I nodded once, and they turned. Nathan took Ellie into his arms, holding her close against his chest as he guided Brittany through the rain toward the shed behind the cottage. Their steps were slow, heavy with shame. Brittany looked back once, and for the first time, her gaze didn't carry resentment. It carried sorrow. I closed the door gently behind them and leaned against it for a long while, the storm outside blurring with the storm inside me. That night, they stayed in the shed. It was barely insulated, just wooden planks and a thin roof that creaked with every gust of wind. Rainwater dripped from one corner. A stack of old blankets and a dusty oil lamp were all they had. I left a bowl of hot porridge outside the shed door every morning. I didn't knock. I didn't wait. Sometimes it was untouched until noon. Other times, it disappeared quickly. They never asked to come inside. And I never invited them. Nathan chopped firewood each morning. I watched from the window, his hands raw, blistered. Brittany hauled water from the pump. She folded the laundry I left hanging out back, often pausing, staring up at the house like she wanted to speak. But I said nothing. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't demand apologies. I didn't ask why. I let silence do the speaking. That was the justice. No lectures, no accusations. Just the weight of cold nights, empty stomachs, and quiet mornings. One day, Ellie ran up the porch. Her little arms clung to my legs. "Grandma," she whispered, burying her face in my apron. "You smell like home." I froze. Then gently, I bent down and wrapped my arms around her. And, for a moment, I felt a hole. The days blended into weeks. Each morning, I found the firewood neatly stacked, my laundry folded, a note sometimes left on the porch. Thank you. No signature. Brittany began to rise earlier, sweeping the yard before I even opened the door. She no longer wore makeup, no designer clothes, just a worn hoodie and quiet hands. Nathan stopped speaking much. His eyes, once sharp with pride, now looked tired, softened. One afternoon, he tried fixing the broken step on my porch. I watched from the window as he knelt in the dirt, hammering with clumsy hands. He didn't ask for tools, didn't ask for help. He just worked. That evening, they left a plate on my kitchen porch. Brittany had cooked my favorite dish, beef stew, with thyme, just like I used to make it. I didn't touch it, not because I was angry, but because I needed them to feel something deeper than guilt. I needed them to understand the loneliness I had once swallowed spoonful by silent spoonful. The next morning, I found Ellie's sweater on the porch, the one I had knitted long ago. It was worn, stitched with care. She had been wearing it. I held it to my face and cried for the first time in months. Not from pain, but because they had started listening. Weeks passed. The shed remained their shelter, but the air around us had shifted. The tension had thinned like fog after sunrise. We no longer circled each other like strangers. There was rhythm now, routine, a quiet rebuilding. I didn't forget. But I no longer flinched at the sound of Nathan's footsteps or Brittany's voice. I no longer measured every breath in fear or disappointment. Then, one evening, as the sky turned gold and the cicadas hummed in the trees, it happened. The first real conversation. I sat on the porch, knitting as usual. Nathan came up the steps, not rushed, not hesitant, just present. He sat beside me without asking. For a while, we said nothing. Then, in a voice barely louder than the wind, he spoke. "Mom, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to be your son again." I kept knitting. He didn't look at me, but his hands were clenched, resting on his knees. I was blind. I thought success meant never needing anyone. I forgot who held me up to get there. I still didn't look up, but I let out a breath I hadn't known I'd been holding. "You don't need to carry the weight forever," I said, voice low even. "Just don't make me carry it again." Nathan's shoulders dropped. The tension in his body melted, like a boy scolded gently, but held nonetheless. Inside the house, Brittany washed the dishes. Ellie hummed softly, playing with her knitted toys on the rug. It wasn't perfection, but it was peace. And that after everything was enough for me, after that evening on the porch, things didn't change overnight. But something subtle shifted. Nathan began fixing things around the house, not out of obligation, but care. Brittany started cooking small dishes and leaving them in the kitchen, no longer expecting praise, only hoping they'd be eaten. I still said little, but silence no longer felt like punishment. It became space, breathing room, a quiet invitation to begin again. Then, one evening without planning, we shared a meal. I was making stew. Nathan returned from a long day of looking for work and placed a loaf of bread on the counter. Brittany boiled tea. Ellie set the table, humming. We sat, and for the first time, it felt like family. We sat. We ate. No grand speeches, no tearful apologies, only the quiet understanding of people who had fallen apart and were trying, piece by piece, to put something back together. Later that night, Ellie came to me with a crayon drawing. 4 figures under a yellow sun, holding hands. She had drawn me in the center. Above my head, in crooked letters, it read, "Home." I taped it to the fridge, not because it made everything perfect, but because it meant we were trying. I used to believe a mother's job was to give without asking, to carry without complaining, to suffer in silence, and call it strength. That was what I saw in my own mother and her mother before her. Women who wore sacrifice like a second skin, who measured love by how much pain they could endure before breaking. For years, I followed that pattern. I poured myself into Nathan, convinced that motherhood meant disappearing into the lives of our children. I gave him my time, my savings, my health, and eventually, even my voice. But no one ever teaches mothers how to survive when the giving is no longer wanted, when the hands you once held begin to push you away, when the people you built your world around decide you are no longer part of theirs. That was the wound I carried. Not their cruelty, but my own silence, my own fear of saying, enough. It took me years, a cold shed, a quiet cottage, a room filled with no one but myself, to hear my own voice again. And when I heard it, it didn't sound angry. It sounded tired and ready to reclaim the pieces I had handed away in the name of love, ready to be a woman first so that I could be a mother again, on my own terms. Forgiveness did not come in a single moment. It came in ripples, through Ellie's hugs, through the smell of bread in the oven, through the sound of laughter returning to the walls of my home. It came when I stopped waiting for apologies and started honoring my own worth. I learned that love without self-respect is not love, it's erasure. That compassion must begin with the self. That healing begins not with others seeing your pain, but with you seeing your own. Now, I wake up in a home that I chose, built, and reclaimed. Not one given out of obligation, but one born from quiet resilience. Nathan sometimes still looks unsure, like he's afraid to say too much, to disturb the delicate peace we've rebuilt. And that's okay. Brittany still fumbles, still glances for cues wondering if I'm still angry. And that's okay too, because what we have now is honest. Not perfect, but real. Ellie calls my house Grandma's magic cottage. And maybe she's not wrong, because there is magic in surviving what tried to break you. There is magic in coming home to yourself. Message to the audience. So if you're watching this, and you've ever felt discarded, unseen, or unappreciated, please remember this. Your worth is not measured by who remembers you, but by how you remember yourself. You are not too old to rebuild, not too late to reclaim. Set boundaries. Speak your truth. Rest when you're tired, not when you're broken. And never forget, love given freely should never cost you yourself. Sometimes, healing isn't about changing others. It's about finally choosing you.